Okay, so again, charter is a permission slip, still exists today. You want to start a new business, you need a permission slip either from the state of Wisconsin or from the United States government. If you've ever wondered, for example, what is the difference between a state bank and a national bank? It's not what you think. All it means is the proprietors went to the state of Wisconsin. They traveled to Madison for a permission slip. Thus, they are a state bank. Or they traveled to Washington, D.C. to get permission. Thus, they are a national bank. That's all it means. Okay, who gave them permission? And if you're a national bank, there are certain other rules that you have to go by as far as how much you have to have in deposits, withholding deposits versus a state bank. But anyway, charter is a permission slip. The Virginia Company of London wants to grow products that they can then sell to right back to the colonists. They are big in India. India is another colony of the English. They're going to grow tea. They're going to grow tobacco. They're going to grow cotton, and they're going to make money. They are going to make money. That is their motive. Question? Anytime there's a question, just word it. Okay, I'm not bothered by that at all. Okay, so here they go. They're going to establish a colony. They started in 1607 with a colony called Jamestown, named after Bill. No, named after James, King James. That's why they called it Jamestown. It's named after King James. The belief was that the Native Americans were wasteful of the land. You're not even farming. Why aren't you mining? You own the land. Use it. And so they took the land from the Indians hostilely. It was a confrontation between the English and the natives at around Jamestown. And so you can see this drawing. I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually a fort. And the English were inside of the fort. That's sort of a fearful experience against the natives. They're going to grow tobacco. Who is going to provide the labor? At first, they were indentured servants. Something like, now this is a guess, but it's going to be somewhat accurate. Something like 80% of English colonists who crossed the Atlantic were indentured servants. Do we know what that term means? Go ahead.
You like work there to live there.
Yes, you offer your services for something like 7 years. Generally, that was about the contract length. For 7 years, you are the employee of the Virginia Company of London. They have you for 7 years. After 7 years, you're free. And what are you going to do? Well, once you're free, what? Any ideas? What's your life now? You're poor? That might be true. You could do it again. You absolutely could do it again. Why would you? The exchange was, you get me to the Americas and I will work for you for 7 years. Now that you're over there, why would I become an indentured servant again? Well, you could continue to live in the housing that the company provided. That's true. But come on, you know this. To do what?
Make money.
Move west, right? Start your own life. Start a farm. Almost everyone who moved to the colonies had dreams of independent farming, right? Everyone's a farmer back then. Not everyone, but a lot of people are farmers. So you go work for this company for a little while, 7 years, then that rookie contract is over. Now you're a free agent. Go do your own thing. And most would move slightly west, and now you are going to farm your own land, right? Subsistence farming. Any questions about what you see so far? Let's keep going. Back off, ladies. This is Captain John Smith. The Jamestown colony was failing. It was failing. And this guy became the de facto ruler of Jamestown. His name is John Smith.
Are we gonna watch
should just watch Pocahontas.
Yeah. And watch how she talked to animals. And
No, it's actually a lot more realistic what actually happens.
I know how she talked to the birds.
They were her friends.
The natives that the English were confronting were called the Powhatan. And a daughter of the chief, her name was Pocahontas. And she, for some reason, begged her father not to wipe out Jamestown. Just leave it. You know, these people aren't hostile. It'll be okay. Big swing and a miss there, right? Probably looking back at her life thought, I shouldn't have done that. By the way, I've seen her grave. I've been to her grave. Anyone know where it is? It's amazing. London. She's buried in London. Yep, she died there. That's right. Right. They brought her back to London. It is kind of she got married to another dude here. Okay. And he organized the colony and basically saved the colony. Right. They were on their way to ceasing existence. And he came over and said, while you're growing tobacco, maybe you should grow food. Because if you don't grow food, what's for dinner tonight, honey? Tobacco. Tobacco. And what do we have to drink? Tobacco juice. Tobacco juice. Give me the spittoon. Glug, glug, glug. Delish. So he organized the colony to say, maybe you should grow food. Maybe we should create military defense so that the natives stop raiding us. He saved the colony. Ready to rock? Let's keep going. The Powhatan Confederacy. The term confederacy is an interesting one. Anyone know what it means? What is a confederacy? Or give me an obvious historical example of another entity that was a confederacy. The South shall rise again. That's right, the Confederate States of America. What does it mean? What's a confederacy? As opposed to a federal system or a unitary system. Very good. In a confederacy, states maintain a high degree of authority. No one question my authority. But in a federal system, it's more balanced evenly between states and the national government. And then in a unitary system, the national government has almost all power. Go to Japan. They have a unitary system. Their national government basically controls everything. Their governors do things like ride in parades. That's what they do. They really have no actual political power. Powhatan had a confederacy, which sort of is interesting because that means that the other states in the confederacy could go along with the will of the entire group, but they also could sort of say, nah, we're not doing that. Think of the Confederate States of America, right? They didn't like the way that the United States was making decisions, so they said, we're out of here. We don't want to go along with that, the idea of states' rights. Very good, okay? So it says here, Powhatan thought the English would help him against his enemies. Powhatan, the native chief, actually thought the English would help him fight his enemies, his native enemies. So he made an alliance with the English. The English had something he really wanted real bad. My lips hurt real bad. Does anyone know what the English had that he wanted real bad? Guns. Guns. That's what they had. He wanted the guns. For their part, the English treated this as a temporary situation. Yeah, we'll help you until we don't want to help you anymore, and then we're done helping you. We have every intention of taking this land and pushing you away. Okay. So along comes this guy named the Lord of War. How bad is that? Do you know that the term war is named after this guy, not the other way around? He wasn't named after war. War was named after this guy. He's the Lord of War. Whoa, right? That's pretty cool in a sad sort of way. He was the English commander during a series of wars between the English and the natives called the Anglo-Powhatan War. So there was the first and the second Anglo-Powhatan War, and we're not going to fight the battles in here. How boring. Basically, a win for the English. A win for the English. The natives ended up moving west. And here's a pattern that's going to be established. You will hear me say this again and again and again in this room. The whites and the natives fight. The natives win a battle or two. The whites win a war. They sign a treaty. The natives agree to move west. The whites say, we'll never bother you again. And then the whites expand. And then there's another battle. The natives win a battle or two. The whites win the war. They sign a new treaty. The natives move further west. We'll never bother you again. And then the whites expand, come into conflict, and on and on and on. And it starts right here. Here's our first look at that little pattern. One other thing to note here before I move on, the Indians were not united. In other words, the weakness of a confederacy, again, rears its head. When we go to the American Civil War, you will see the same pattern. One of the huge advantages, by the way, right now, what I'm about to do is called synthesis. You want to understand why the Powhatan Confederacy failed? I'm about to explain to you why the South failed in the Civil War. After I explain to you why the South failed in the Civil War, will you know anything about why this group failed? Yes, you will, because you'll say it's the same reason. I'm explaining the Civil War, and you're going to say, that's the same as this. That's synthesis, and you have to do it once in each essay. The South failed in the Civil War partly because they didn't have to listen to Jefferson Davis. Because if Jefferson Davis made any order, they could say, no, we're not doing that. And if you try and force us, we'll just secede. Because after all, if you think about the Confederacy was based on the idea that if you didn't like what the National Guard was doing, you could secede. Do you know during the American Civil War, Georgia threatened to secede from the Confederacy? So Jefferson Davis said, all right, never mind. We won't, because he ordered Georgia to produce new troops, and Georgia said, no, and we're going to quit if you tell us again. So it's like, all right, never mind. All right. Well, how effective is Jefferson Davis in leading a group where they don't have to follow him? They don't have to follow him. Imagine the football team that could just disobey Coach Larson. All right, we're going to run a pass right, and the quarterback like, nah. Right? What a good team. Okay. Another one of my favorite pictures is this one. Remember that picture I showed you last week where they were eating fingers? Just go on the website and check this out. Some of you are kind of far away, but oh my goodness, there's some nutsy stuff going on this picture. And it was a drawing of the battles. So, pleasant. Questions? Let's keep going. Last slide. We are looking at specific colonies. What made them unique? Or as the French say, unique. In 1612, a guy by the name of John Rolfe perfected the growing of tobacco. It became the highest grade tobacco in the English Empire. But they concluded that you can't depend on indentured servants anymore. They keep, quitting after 7 years, which means you have to constantly bring a fresh supply in. We need a permanent employee system. And the idea is like, well, how about blacks? How about slaves? Sweet idea. And so what we have here is the improvement of an agricultural method leads to slavery surviving. Later on, anyone know who invented the cotton gin? You ever heard of the cotton gin?
Yeah.
Okay. Invented in the South, shall rise again. It is credited with saving slavery because slavery was going to, the raising of cotton was going to die off because it's too hard. You got to pick the seeds out of the cotton. It's too hard until some guy came up with a cotton gin. Yay! Cotton saved. Slavery was saved. Thank goodness. Same thing here. The successful growing of tobacco saved the institution of slavery. Yeah! You are looking, if you can see it, at some of the methods used to control the Africans. If you are ever in South Carolina, I've never been there. I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it. It's called the Slave Museum. It's supposed to be heartbreaking in its cruelty. Some of the ways of controlling the slave population, including physical restraints. Have anyone ever heard of a thumb cuff? A thumb cuff? No one's ever heard of a thumb cuff? So imagine a metal pipe that's hollow, and there are teeth pointing in. And to release those teeth, I just press a button on top. So you just stick the slave's thumbs in it, so that the teeth are facing inward. If they try and pull their thumb out, they've just skinned their thumbs to the bone, right? And I just grab the metal thing and I lead you to where I want you to go. Okay. And they're very, very creative in the control of the African population. You'll see here the specific year when the first batch of slaves was actually brought to the colonies, 1619.
What's the picture?
The picture is a face mask. So this guy's either going to be playing goalie or he's going to be manipulated. So the owner would be able to grab any one of these metal wires and grab him and pull him where he wanted, or tie a rope to him, pull him where he wanted. Right? Sorry?
It's like a dog leash.
I suppose, in a way, with including a muzzle. Yep, including a muzzle, right? I mean, and to think this through, what does this picture indicate to you about the acceptance of slavery on the part of Africans? Did they say, "Yep, I'm your slave"? Great. No, there was resistance, which led to the need for an industry of slave controlling tools like this lovely thing. The first were indentured servants, and then the conclusion was, no, let's keep this going. Why release them? Let's just keep them. Let's just keep them. Now, they didn't reach this next conclusion until later, but let's say that you're a slave but you become pregnant and your child is not a slave until someone said, I got an idea. Let's create slaves in perpetuity. Slaves forever. Not only are you a slave, but all your offsprings are slaves. What a bargain if you bought a female. If you bought a female, not only are you buying that slave, you're buying all the offspring of that slave, right? All we need to do is knock her up with a good, strong male slave. And so now you're getting into the next concept, which starts soon, and that is breeding. The breeding of slaves. So that we can create stronger slaves. And that absolutely happens, which is incredibly depressing. The Virginia colony also had a local government called the Virginia House of Burgesses. It was local people who lived in Virginia, the rulers, the elite, the ones that worked for the company that was in London, but came over to the Virginia colony and made sure everything was running smoothly. It is the first legislature in North America, the first legislative body. This last bullet here, VA equals Royal Colony. The colony of Virginia became a royal colony. Does anyone know what that means? No, but thank you for guessing. Anyone else? Royal colony means who's ultimately the boss? Who is ultimately the boss? The king. The king was ultimately the boss. You could have been a proprietary colony owned by a company. And who's ultimately the boss? Whoever owns the company is ultimately the boss. Virginia became a royal colony in that the king took over, or maybe the queen. Okay. The last note that we're covering as far as this class is concerned is the colony of Maryland, named after Susie. No, Mary, Queen Mary, Queen of Scots. You ever heard of a Bloody Mary?
Yeah.
That's her. And if you ever want to get depressed, investigate why it's called a Bloody Mary. What the hell? It's crazy. Not exactly a title that, well, she probably was proud of it. Let's just say things got a little violent there in England, and they named a drink after her. And the drink is red. Okay. The guy who founded Maryland is a guy by the name of George Calvert. He was Catholic. Anything wrong with being Catholic in England?
You're owned by the
Yes.
You're not.
So in England,
Catholic. You're
But-
supposed to be Anglican.
yeah, you're supposed to be Anglican. You're not supposed to be Catholic in England. And so he was kicked out. And then he said, well, can I go to the Americas and start a Catholic tolerant colony for all of the people that are in England, but they do not want to convert. We don't want to kill them all. Come on. Let them be productive. Let them work for you, but they'll be away from you in the colonies. And that is exactly what Maryland became. It became a Catholic haven. Later on, a guy by the name of Calvert, he became the new driver of the Maryland colony. And he said, yeah, that's fine and well and all, and that's good for you to bring in Catholics, but this colony needs to be productive. So let's introduce tobacco. Let's introduce slavery. Maryland, last note of all, Maryland became the most tolerant colony of the eventual 13, in that it didn't matter what religion you were, as long as you were a Christian, you were welcome here. Any Christian religion. No Jews. No Muslims. No. No atheists. You have to be Christian, but you can be Anglican or Catholic or Lutheran or Protestant or any Christian religion. How tolerant. Now, can you imagine that today? Can you imagine if we had the new state, North California? Any Christian is welcome here. And would we today say, wow, what a welcoming state? No, today we'd be like, what? What do you mean any Christian is welcome here? You can't do that, right? That violates our First Amendment. So how far we've come as a nation as far as tolerance is concerned. A couple hundred years ago, this was seen as tolerant. Today we'd look at that and say, my goodness, how intolerant. By the way, that should inform you of how tolerant the other colonies were, as in not. Okay, they were not tolerant at all. Okay, very good. Any questions here? Stand and stretch, do some jumping jacks. You got 2 minutes, and then we will attack some other things.
My eyes feel like the glove on this.
I slept through 3 alarms today. Yeah.
I
Like I didn't even wake up. Like my mom woke me up at 7:20 and was like, are you going to school? I was like,
That's terrific.
yes. Yep, go for it.
I always fall behind a little bit.
I woke up at the last minute, heard the Packers win, went back to sleep.
This morning or last night?
Last night.
Oh. Are you a Packer or Viking fan, Connor?
I know this is weird, but I'm both.
All right.
You look like a Viking fan. You look like a Pack fan. You know, some people like look like a Viking
You
fan.
should get one of those jerseys that are like half and half Brett Favre.
Yeah. And if they played each other, I'd say Vikings, but if not, I'd say my goal is to cover all 4 documents that you were subsequently assigned as far as European justification for colonization. Is this news to you? You have that look that I don't know what we're talking about. Oh, that's fine. No big deal. Okay. You could probably guess Zinn and Schweigert and Allen's point of view. The question is, what was the justification used by the Europeans to take land from the natives? How did they justify it in their mind that we are justified in doing this? What did Zinn say the Europeans used as justification? Probably selfish. What did Schweigert Allen use as justification for colonization? Probably selfless. Okay? Within your table, I'll just give you 2-3 minutes here. Make sure that all 4 documents are covered by someone at your table, someone. So reread it and see if I'm right. See if Zinn is suggesting a selfish reason and Schweigert and Allen are suggesting a selfless reason. And then be able to verbalize, well, what was that selfish reason? What was the selfless reason? Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes.
1 to 10 or
I was assigned to
I did 8.
Add 7.
So we have 7, 8, and 9. Which is,
Let's all do Travis.
Want to talk about sociology last year? You watched volleyball.
Yeah, no, pass with an A.
And I'm going to pass
Because
this one.
sociology's easy.
So is this.
Not what I've heard. Traveling with every activity.
It's like the same as as 9. They want to spread Christianity and tried really hard to save them.
that dude was selfless.
Dude, Rock is about this stuff.
Really?
Come on.
I've had to sneeze all morning.
Look at him stretching his shoes in the eyes and then
Is their ignorance, I guess. For themselves.
Very good. Let's go. Pretty simple, I think. Maybe you think so too. Let's treat document, what is it? 7, 8, 9, 10. Is that right? 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's treat documents 7 and 8 as if they're the same document, because in a way they are. Okay. Anyone want to become the champion of this document? Here's what Zinn says. And go ahead. Let's hear what you have to say.
Okay, well, basically, I'm saying that Columbus just wanted so much gold and that the plan pretty much backfired. And once it started backfiring,
What was the European justification for colonization? Gold. There it is. It is an economic argument. We are justified in taking over lands in the Americas for wealth. Not the wealth of the natives, not to help them become wealthy, to help us become wealthy. That's the answer. Now, what you need to do, if you find this to be a persuasive argument, is find 2 specific examples of European desire for gold. Prove it. Prove that that's what they wanted. Any questions there? Okay, that takes care of documents 7 and 8 in my mind. You need to come up with evidence to support that. Where do you find it? In your book, online. That sheet I gave you is very helpful. Class discussions.
Can we use that evidence, the evidence for this that we, and then use it for the Columbus people?
Oh, very good question. Okay. She just asked, hey, can I use a piece of evidence to support Zinn's view of Columbus and then use that same piece of evidence to support Zinn's view of the European justification for colonization? And the answer is no. You cannot. You can't use the same piece of evidence. You have to find something else. But I will brighten your mood a bit if you're suddenly depressed. And I'm going to brighten it by saying this. Here's document 1. It makes an argument that Columbus is awful. Yes?
Yeah.
Does document 2 make the same argument? I think it does, actually. Right? Does document 3 make the same argument? I think it does, actually. That Columbus is awful. You only need document evidence from one of those documents. Only one of them. So pick the document that you think is making the best claim about Columbus. Now, what do you do with the other 2? Come on. What do you do with the other 2 documents? Use them as historical evidence. Use the other 2 documents. Is there anything in the other 2 documents that you look at and say, well, there's a good piece of evidence right there? Sweet. Use it. Use these documents. Listen, this is important. You only cite document evidence. You do not cite historical evidence. You don't cite historical evidence. The assumption is you just learned that in the context of this incredible class. You don't need to cite it. Okay, same thing. With documents 5 and 6, Schweigert and Allen, they're making claims about Columbus the hero. Well, pick which one you like. Use the other one as a piece of historical evidence. And same thing with European justification of colonization. You've got documents 7 and 8 making a claim about why the Europeans do what they do. Use one as document evidence. Look to the other one to see if there's any historical evidence you can use. Okay. I think I've just made your life easier. I hope you're seeing it that way. Right? All right, let's try documents 9 and 10. Schweikert. It's really annoying that I keep putting Schweikert. Who would like to become the champion of documents 9 and 10? Schweikert and Allen have this to say about why the Europeans do what they do. Go ahead.
They wanted to spread the gospel and Christianity.
Very good. Religion. Right? Religion. We're here to save your souls, say Schweikert and Allen. And Zinn's like, that's a bunch of crap. They were there to take the wealth. No, we're here to save them. We're here to save. Do take gold? Yeah. But we're here to save them, to Christianize them. Now, to me, historical evidence would simply require you to prove it. How do we know the Spanish tried to spread religion? We know it. We know it. How do we know it? Any ideas? Find physical evidence of churches that were built. Right? They're everywhere. These churches are everywhere. They didn't build them because they look pretty. They built them to spread Christianity. Right? Look long term. Look at the evidence and how successful it was. South America is almost all Catholic today. It's almost all Catholic. Mexico is like over 90% Catholic. It's kind of amazing, actually. Well, where'd that start? Right here. Right here. Okay. Any questions? For tomorrow. We have class tomorrow. Yes, for tomorrow. The next set of documents. The next four. At your table, will you please subdivide? Say, all right, you got this one, I've got this one. Okay. No need to all of you taking all four.
I'll do 12. Second one.
So is it 11, 12, 13, 14? Is that right? Okay.
Riley, you can pick
11, 12, 13, 14.
the last one.
I'm doing 11, Logan's doing 14, Hannah's doing
12.
12.
Riley, you can pick any.
Okay, I'll do easy.
Okey-doke.
Allow me to expound a little bit on the essay that's sneaking up on us with each passing day. You will, in your essay, have to take on two topics and how Zinn and Schweikert and Allen differ on the view of those two topics. We have covered two topics now. One is Columbus. How did Zinn view Columbus? How did Schweikert and Allen view Columbus? Today in class, we covered the European justification for colonization. There's your second one. But we're going to cover a third one. Tomorrow, we're going to cover how about the relationship between the Europeans and the natives? How does Zinn explain that away? How do Schweikert and Allen explain that away? And then later on this week, the fourth topic will be, well, what about the cultures themselves? How does Zinn view European versus native culture? How do Schweikert and Allen view native versus European culture? Ultimately, in this class, you will have 4 different topics, and you'll pick 2. The 2 that you're most comfortable with. If you come up to me sometime, next week and say, I don't get the argument that's made between Zinn and Schweikert and Allen over the European relationship to the Native Americans, I don't get it. What I'm going to say to you is, then don't write about it. Choose a different one. Pick the 2 you get. Don't pick the 2 you don't get. Okay. All right. Any questions there? I have gifts for you. You already got this piece of beautiful historical evidence about Columbus. I am going to be giving to you this handout, which points out that really, it was the king and queen of Spain who are to blame for the European conquest, Spanish conquest of the Americas. They're the ones to blame. Historical evidence. I've got another argument that actually it was Columbus's men, not Chris. It was his men that are to blame, not Chris. Another piece of historical evidence. I've got another delicious one that says it was the system. Right? You can't blame Christopher Columbus for being a racist. Everyone was racist. Right? You can't blame him for having beliefs that were prevalent at the time. That's amazing to have that. Okay? That it was the system. And then maybe my favorite one of all, it was the Indians' fault. They're the ones to blame. They outnumbered the Europeans hundreds to one. Pull your head out and see them for what they were. They're not gods. They're to blame. Okay, you all get one of each. My suggestion, in order to make this simple, is I'm going to make it available here, and cafeteria light, you're going to come up and grab one of each.
Just for a paper.
And class is over. You have the remaining
If it doesn't
15
relate to the
minutes to
documents,
get
how are we
whatever
gonna
you need
use
to
it?
get done in here.
Maybe the next second speed.
Go that way.
Are we gonna do this a different day?
What? Oh, no.
Yeah, let's save this for small class lab Wednesday. Have highlighted that paragraph that I gave you completely.
You might want to look a little later. Built in 1810. Okay, so no, just to the date.